There are moments when secrecy doesn't just look suspicious, it looks deliberate. And that's exactly what happened when Jamie Raskin walked out of a Department of Justice satellite office after reviewing what he described as unredacted Epstein files. What he saw didn't calm concerns, it detonated them. This wasn't a normal briefing. It wasn't a secure committee room in the Capitol. Raskin described being sent to a seemingly desolate facility with only 4 computers rows available for members of Congress to review millions of documents tied to one of the most notorious criminal conspiracies in modern American history. 4 computers, millions of documents. That alone raises a question. Was this process designed for transparency or obstruction? Raskin made clear that Congress's central concern going into this review was simple and non-negotiable. Protect the survivors.
Hello, everybody. I've just gotten back from this Department of Justice satellite office, a seemingly otherwise desolate facility where they've set up some offices and some computers for us to go and review the Epstein files. I think there were 4 computers in the room that I was in. I was at one of the computers. Now, we're there because the members of the Judiciary Committee are very concerned because the most emphatic provision in the Epstein Files Transparency Act was that none of the survivors' privacy be compromised in any way. And we wanted to make sure that their names would be redacted and all personal identifying information would be redacted. But there are hundreds and hundreds of pages in the Epstein files that were recently released where identifying information about victims is right there, including people's names. So that was a dramatic departure from the demands of the statute. But then conversely, we didn't want to see any redactions of the names of co-conspirators, accomplices, enablers, abusers, rapists, simply to spare them potential embarrassment, political sensitivity, or disgrace of some kind. And yet, nonetheless, the Epstein file documents that were released are filled with redactions of names and information about people who clearly are not victims and may fall into that other category. So I went over there and I was able to determine, at least I believe, that there were tons of completely unnecessary redactions in addition to the failure to redact the names of victims, and so that's troubling to us.
Did you see the names of any potential co-conspirators that were redacted?
Well, I saw the names of lots of people who were redacted for mysterious or baffling or inscrutable reasons.
Are any of them well-known individuals?
For example, Mr. Wexner, his name was redacted from a government document, and I couldn't understand the logic of that. He was not a victim, and his name has appeared other places. Now, the Department of Justice has not sent forth its so-called privilege log, so it's not explained yet why there might be certain redactions that have been made. I saw one document which was an email that was sent by Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell, which was the forward of an email that he had received from some of his lawyers, giving an account of a conversation between Epstein lawyers and Trump lawyers and others about what had taken place during that 2009 period. It was during the period of the 2009 investigation. And Epstein's lawyers synopsized and quoted Trump as saying that that Jeffrey Epstein was not a member of his club at Mar-a-Lago, but he was a guest at Mar-a-Lago, and he had never been asked to leave. And that was redacted for some indeterminate, inscrutable reason. I know it seems to be at odds with some things that President Trump has been saying recently about how he had kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club or asked him to leave, and this was at least one report that appears to contradict it.
What did you see specific to President Trump or President Clinton, and were there specific redactions to them?
Well, I just gave an example of one redaction related to President Trump. I did not see any redactions related to President Clinton.
What was
I mean, remember,
done in all this?
Well, I don't, here's the thing. The Department of Justice is under orders from Congress to release the entire Epstein file. They released 3.5 million documents, and they've withheld 3 million documents. So about half of all the documents have not been released yet. Of the 3.5 million documents that have been released, I probably had the opportunity to review maybe 30 or 40 of them. Okay, so this is going to be an extremely time-consuming and painstaking process. The Attorney General and the Department of Justice have said that this process was something that was completed by them back in July. These materials could have been released long ago, but they're just being released now. And if every member of Congress who voted for the discharge petition, if all 217 of us spent every waking hour over at the Department of Justice, it would still take us months to get through all of those documents. And there are only 4 computers now, so they would certainly need to get a couple hundred more computers for all of the members. But the point is that there is no way before Attorney General Bondi arrives on Wednesday that we're going to have the opportunity to go through every redaction in order to ask thorough questions.
Do you think that's the connection, that they held up releasing this so that everybody wouldn't be as thoroughly prepared for her testimony Wednesday?
No, I think that the Department of Justice has been in a cover-up mode for many months and has been trying to sweep the entire thing under the rug. And the more deeply that I get into it, because obviously our colleagues on the Oversight Committee have taken the lead, but judiciary plays a very important role because we oversee the Department of Justice. But the more that I've gotten into it, the more I believe that the survivors here, the victims who are now active citizens for justice, really are leading the way. And we need to be having hearings with the survivors to hear from them about their experiences so they can explain what happened and so they can begin to set forth a theory of what took place. We need to be investigating the money. We need to be investigating the organizational hierarchy. There's no way you run $1 billion international child sex trafficking ring with just 2 people committing crimes, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. No way. It doesn't work like that. So we need to figure out what other conspiracies were involved, what other co-conspirators were involved. And I really do believe that listening to the survivors is going to be our pathway through this nightmare.
What is the next step for Democrats to take? You say there are obviously millions of documents, 4 computers. What is the next step? And
The Epstein Files Transparency Act explicitly requires that the identities of victims be fully redacted. No exceptions. But according to Raskin, that is not what happened. He said that in hundreds of pages of recently released documents identifying information about victims, including names, was plainly visible. That's not a technical glitch. That's a direct violation of the statute. And then came the twist that changed everything. While victims' identities were left exposed, Raskin says the names of non-victims, people who may fall into the category of co-conspirators, enablers, or accomplices, were aggressively redacted. Not for privacy, not for safety, but seemingly to protect reputations. That inversion is staggering. The people the law demands protection for weren't protected. The people the public has a right to scrutinize were shielded. Raskin didn't just speculate, he gave examples. He said the name of Les Wexner, a well-known figure whose name has appeared publicly in Epstein reporting before, was redacted from government documents for reasons he described as mysterious and baffling. Wexner is not a victim, and yet his name was hidden. Then Raskin described reviewing an email exchange involving Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, an email forwarding legal communications that referenced conversations between Epstein's lawyers and Trump's lawyers during the 2009 investigation period. According to Raskin, portions of that exchange contradict public claims Donald Trump has made in recent years about having banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago, and that portion, too, was redacted. No explanation, no privilege log, no justification. When asked whether he saw similar redactions tied to Bill Clinton, Raskin said no. That matters, because selective redaction isn't just suspicious, it suggests intent. Raskin went further, explaining the sheer scale of what's being withheld. The DOJ has released 3.5 million documents, and withheld another 3 million. Roughly half the Epstein archive remains unseen. Even more troubling, the DOJ claims this review process was completed months ago, back in July, yet the documents are only being released now, just days before Attorney General Pam Bondi is scheduled to testify before Congress. Raskin didn't mince words. He said he believes the timing is intentional, designed to prevent lawmakers from being fully prepared to question her. That's not mismanagement. That's strategy. Raskin openly accused the Department of Justice of being in cover-up mode for months, attempting to sweep the entire Epstein scandal under the rug. And then he said something that cuts to the heart of the issue. He said the real leaders in this fight are not politicians. They're the survivors. Raskin argued that there is no possible way a billion-dollar international child sex trafficking operation was run by just two people, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. No organization of that scale operates without financiers, facilitators, fixers, and protectors. Which means the real story isn't just in the documents, it's in the money, the hierarchy, and the silence. And that's why he says Congress must shift its focus. Not just more document dumps, not more controlled access rooms with 4 computers, but hearings led by survivors, investigations into financial networks, and real scrutiny of institutional failure. Because the deeper Raskin gets into this, the clearer it becomes. The greatest injustice may not be what Epstein did, but how many people were protected afterward. This isn't just about the past. It's about whether the justice system is willing to expose itself when it fails. If victims are exposed while powerful names are hidden, that's not transparency, that's protection. And when the Department of Justice controls the pace, the access, and the redactions, accountability dies in procedural fog. If you believe survivors deserve protection, not exploitation. If you think redactions should shield victims, not reputations. And if you believe justice delayed is justice denied, then this moment matters. Like the video. Subscribe for deep political accountability analysis. And tell me in the comments, is this incompetence or a cover-up in plain sight? Because according to Jamie Raskin, the truth is already there. Someone just doesn't want you to see it.